Alright guys, and this is my first ever video, so please excuse the poor quality, and I didn't comb my hair, so what the hell. But anyway, uh, I wanted to discuss a little bit about verbal abuse, something of which that many of us have seen or been targets of or have otherwise experienced. And I guess one of the biggest things about verbal abuse is that, from the standpoint of the victim, the one who's targeted for the abuse, it can seem like the abuser is sort of quote unquote all powerful, like the abuser is extremely confident because they take a very striking pose with their body when they're abusing. If you ever look at somebody when they're uh, engaging in verbal abuse, their shoulders are squared, their backs are straight, they've got a very imposing type of pose to them that's meant to intimidate, and that, uh, from the point of the victim, is something that's very it's very intimidating, and it makes the abuser seem like they are quote unquote infallible, and it makes the victim sort of think, well, hey, this guy's infallible, so or this girl is infallible, so that they must be right, and I must be a loser, and this person's opinion is completely objective, and they're never wrong, and they're right. It just goes kind of on and on and on the part of the victim. But one of the things I've found out as someone who has been a victim of it and has unfortunately made the mistake of giving it once or twice, not many times, but once or twice, is that verbal abusers, when they are in the act of abusing, they are revealing a fundamental weakness. And you might ask why. Because the abuser is dependent on the victim's weakness. They draw power from the weakness. Verbal abuse, when it comes down to it, is nothing more than drawing power from someone else. And if you look at a verbal abuser, when they are with someone that they think is equal to them or even more confident than they are, what are they going to do? They're going to treat that person with respect. They're going to treat that person with humility and honesty and at least a sense of decency. But as soon as they encounter someone, or maybe even something that's weaker than them, on which they could take their energy out, they will target that thing. It might be a person, unfortunately, or it might even be an animal. They might uh, have a bad day and might kick their cat around or something like that. I mean, it sounds kind of menial for me to be saying this, but that is unfortunately the case. And verbal abuse is something that it destroys people's souls. It really does. It eats at their heart, and it just destroys the very fabric of who someone is, because the victim takes what the abuser says to heart, and it's something that they carry with them throughout their day. And it often happens that the victim becomes an abuser themselves, because verbal abusers concentrate on a lot of negative energy. They hold negative energy within themselves and don't find positive ways to release that energy. So very often they blow up, they yell, they scream, they intimidate, and then they feel guilty afterwards, but that guilt sort of builds up inside of them, like nothing more than a pressure tank with a valve that won't open to allow gradual release of pressure. It just opens up wide so that pressure can just be released violently or just stay shut. And that's the way verbal abusers are. They're just pressure tanks with valves that stay shut until the pressure just builds up so much that it just blows out and blows out violently, and the target of the abuse is very indiscriminate and very personal. And I've watched several videos of people speaking about the subject on YouTube, and one of the common phrases that comes up when someone is being verbally abused is the abuser will say, "What you really mean is blah blah blah." And that's an attempt on the part of the abuser to take power from the victim and basically program the victim to think that they are guilty for causing the abuser to act the way that they're acting. And it's a power play. But there's other signs of verbal abuse as well, which I'm not going to get into right now, but are certainly very prevalent. And people might be asking, what is it that they can do when there's a verbal abuser in the room or when something is happening? I found that one thing that really helps out is to fight back. Not yell back, but to talk back to that person in a way that's confident. Not emotional, not even hardly excitable, but cool and level-headed and confident. Like if someone says, "You're worthless," maybe a good way to respond to that would be saying, "Is that how you really feel? Because you know what? Your words right now, they're very hurtful and disrespectful." And often the verbal abuser will just go, the hell with it, you're overreacting. That is a defensive reaction. When they say something in defense like that, they know, and you should too, that you have effectively called them out. And you have effectively told them that they are not going to bother you. And that they are not going to win over you. Verbal abusers look at the situation of abuse. They look at it as a win-lose situation. In the course of the conversation, their attitude is generally, I win and you lose. Well, if you're being abused by that very person, they want to fight. They want a fight. They want someone to engage them and kind of battle with them, because then they can draw that person into their game. But if you respond with a cool and level head, you're not only sticking up for yourself, but you're refusing to play their game. You see, if you yell and intimidate or get emotional, you're playing into their game. If you play their game, you're playing into their rules because they own that game. The owner of the game, the maker of that game, the abuser, makes up the rules. And as long as you play into that, as long as you become a part of that, then there's no way that the abuser can lose. There's only a way that you, the victim, can lose, because you'll never, I don't want to say you'll never win, because I don't want to think of it as a win-lose situation in terms of how the victim should look at it, but you'll never have positive reconciliation within yourself, if that makes any sense, and especially with the abuser. And excuse me, and that's kind of the end of my tirade for today. Thank you for listening.